So John Mearsheimer has created a YouTube channel, and I did a video about his first video where he talks about the reasons that Russia invaded Ukraine. Now I believe the facts in the past 4 or 5 years basically make those claims a little bit suspect. But nonetheless, the claims represent what he's thought for years in his framework of basically structural realism, more offensive realism, where nations basically or countries do what they have to do to weaken their neighbors and make themselves stronger. And they're not really, these things aren't based on politicians or really the leaders, the politics, the statesmen, the whatever, like the state itself, the institutions itself, whatever reasons, these reasons bubble up, and then a state will go to war with another state. And, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, I think it's a very rational argument. Anyway, John Mearsheimer has written many books about it, and he's especially explained a lot about what goes on with Israel and Israel's relationship to the United States, which makes his second video, which is on Iran, really sort of mind-blowing. So in the first video, I say that he's sort of like doing this con to pander to the YouTube audience for attention, and I know that's probably not a nice thing to say, but it's not. I should keep this more intellectual. I'm doing the very thing I'm accusing him of doing. But yeah, the second video is really surprising to me because he doesn't go into any of his framework about why the U.S. is attacking Iran. I'm going to go into this. Had AI help me do the slides if you don't mind. So let's get right into it. So we're going to ask for the response to episode 2, the question Mearsheimer won't ask, right? So in episode 2 today, he spends 40 minutes on how the Iran war is going, but he spends no time on why it started. So what he says at the top of his video is he says that there are 4 goals of this war. There's 1, regime change in Tehran; 2, to end Iran's uranium enrichment; to 3, destroy the long-range ballistic missile program; and 4, to cut support for Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. So, but what he doesn't answer is, where do these goals come from? He never asks, not once in the episode, even though in his framework of structural realism, that would be the first question you would ask. Why would the United States, why would the country of the United States want to attack Iran? Why are they trying to weaken Iran? What of the United States' interests are they trying to strengthen? So anyway, but my question is, when has Trump or any American politician described Iran as a first-order threat to the United States? If you don't talk about Israel, I can't think of one. I can't think of any politician that's ever gone, has never said, oh, we need to do this to Iran, and then not meant for the U.S. interests only. We don't care about what Israel wants. I've never heard it. Now, of course, there were those people back in 1979 when the Shah was deposed, and we had the hostages in the embassy. Sure, yeah, in the 80s there was that kind of talk. Those people are dead or retired. So I don't think there's anybody now talking about that. But I guess you could make an objection. You could say that if you wanted. So I put the objection here in the slide. And the record shows clearly that generally every president for the past 20 years, definitely as long as Netanyahu's been in power, has been asked to weaken Iran in some way by Israel. And then, I think even the critics, everybody recognizes this. And Mearsheimer recognizes it and even goes into it in a book. So why doesn't he go into it here? Why does he start from, okay, we attacked, and why did it succeed? Why did it fail? And then, well, what should we do? What can we do? Instead of just saying, well, why did we do it? Because it's really important. If you don't understand why you did it, can you really put it in context? So if you're saying, okay, we're deposing the leadership, right, is first thing, like, well, why? Like, are you assuming that they're just going to get, like, we're going to get our own leader in there? Are you assuming that, okay, we don't really care what leader goes next, the country will become so dysfunctional that we can basically, bring the army and invade it? Like, what reason? What are you getting out of deposing the regime? And then the Iranian enrichment, like, well, why don't you go do that to North Korea? I don't understand why Iran specifically. And why isn't Israel? Why don't they say how many nukes they have? Why aren't we doing that to? So it just doesn't make sense in the nuclear issue. And then if you say, okay, well, we don't want them, dealing with the Houthis and the Hezbollah and whatever. But what do Americans care about those? I mean, I understand why Israel doesn't want them, but why do we care? What's in it for the United States, on that thing? And then what's the other reason? And then the ballistic missiles. Well, we all know, all American analysts have pointed out that Iran's been burying these missiles. So I don't think any military person, nothing that's happened in the attack is a surprise to anyone. Anyway, I just wanted to say that he wrote a book about it. He goes into it, but he never mentions it. Why? Why in this second episode is it all about, Trump? So, to put this simply, in the first episode, Mearsheimer's Russia invaded Ukraine. He goes into all the reasons why. But in the second episode, today, it's like, no, Trump attacked Iran, right? It's not the U.S. attacked Iran or the U.S. and Israel. It's Trump. Now, in the video, he does talk about U.S. Iran is, U.S. Israel has similar interests in it, but he never explains them in depth. It's all in passing. So it's a contradiction, right? Because, again, his whole theory is the structural realism, and he does that in episode 1. But in episode 2, it's all about Trump. He's just like another gossip monger about Trump. Like, there's a camp of like, Trump's an idiot, and there's a camp that Trump is crazy Ivan and, the common sense man. And, there's those two camps, and he's sort of like playing in both those camps a little bit. He's not following his own framework, his own way of looking at the world. He does every explanation as a personality trait. So he'll say, about Trump, he can't bring himself and why Trump won't honor the memorandum he signed. It's unacceptable on losing a war he started to feels to him, and that Trump may lash out. What's all this like personal psychology? When has Mearsheimer ever done that? I mean, these are motives, moods, and character. They're the vocabulary of classical realism, the school that Mearsheimer's own theory was built to replace. Like, he's not basically, he's sort of like, admitting defeat, or he's sort of like saying, I was wrong about everything. My 20 to 30 years of work and books, you know what? It was all wrong. You're right. It's all about Trump. It's all about the president. It's really actually pretty incredible. But, Mearsheimer's 78, so you have to wonder, anyway. So this is, I just did a screen clip of offensive realism, which is, again, and this is from Wikipedia, and it's a structural theory that, unlike classical realism, right, it places the principal emphasis on security competition among great powers with the anarchy in the international system, not on the human nature of statesmen and diplomats. And I mentioned this in the first video about him. This is basically Mearsheimer's thing, but it's nowhere in his second video. So then the other problem is that even within just following the attack, there is a very important thing, like where is their U.S. interest and where is their Israel interest? And that is a problem with what is being negotiated, right? Because essentially, Israel wants to continue the war, and Trump doesn't for political reasons, domestic political reasons. But Mearsheimer really can't have that, conversation, because this whole video is built on basically what I call like Trump gossip and, and psychologizing and armchair, whatever, so he can't do it. But that's really the big question. So you waste like 40 minutes on this nonsense about, these various, the naval, Air Force, all these military things, where really this should be his bread and butter, political analysis, right? This is where it needs his framework the most. What's in it for the United States? What's in it for Israel? When we understand these things, can we understand why they're pursuing these types of military, adventures? So, again, this is more about, he assigns Washington, Jerusalem the same four objectives that set up top. But again, there are differences between them. There's a lot of complexity, which he doesn't go into at all. It's just monolithic. We're attacking Iran, and the U.S. and the Iran, or whatever, everybody, it's a priori. We don't need to really think about it. So I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that Israel controls foreign policy. And I'm not saying question anybody's loyalty. I'm not saying, Mearsheimer is a Russian propagandist, though many accuse him of. And this kind of video, in the second video, gives him a lot of evidence. I hate to say it. And I'm not saying that Mearsheimer is hiding his views, because he does publish them at book length. Again, him of all people. Like, he wrote a book about the Israel lobby that really pissed off Israel. He of all people knows it. Like, again, he knows all this stuff. He wrote the book on it, but he's silent in this second video. It's really mind-blowing. So then the three questions I have, right, that I think he should answer, he probably could answer or would have a very interesting answer. Why now? Why not 2012 or 2015 under Biden? Why February? Why does Ukraine get a structural explanation and Iran a psychological one? Why is the Israel lobby argument absent from the one episode where it's the most relevant? Like, why doesn't he answer these questions? And then why is everybody interviewing him on the internet not answering? They all, I feel like, again, there's just this, problem on the internet in general and geopolitics where nobody's really challenging each other. Like, I love George Napolitano. I love, Danny Deep Dive. I'm forgetting the name of his channel, but you know who I'm talking about. There are a lot of great geopolitical channels. But my personal opinion, they're all getting very lazy. They're all getting too polite. They're not challenging. They're not there. But what's worse is they're condescending to their audience. They don't believe their audience can understand the complexities. They don't believe that somebody like Mearsheimer couldn't take a grilling on being interviewed. I think he could. So I watch lots of these things, and when I'm watching them, I'm like, ask this question, ask that, and they don't ask it. They always ask a question it's so like, it's soft. It's like a lot of softness. And I don't think these are soft subjects, right? This is war. We're at war. And Mearsheimer especially considering the books he's written, he needs to defend himself intellectually and stop pandering to this, like, Trump armchair psychologist, whatever, like, doing the conversation that everybody else is doing. Mearsheimer needs to do his conversation, his viewpoint, his understanding, knowledge, and insight. All right, that's it for today. See you later.